So glad to be here. I'm a poster person. I'm very glad to be able to have some creativity to design a poster. I hope you like it. It's done in comic books format. I hope, because I'm studying science communication. So unless I can explain complex subjects visually, or I'm not doing something right. And so my problem is this post-normal science. And post-normal science, for me, is everything and nothing. I didn't see an uniformity here, and that's what characterizes post-normal science for me. That means that we all agree that we disagree with something, but we never agree with what we disagree. And so what I think about post-normal science, because I'm not a scientist, is you have to decide what science is. Because science is a body of knowledge that grew exponentially in the last decades. I think 90% of all knowledge was acquired in the last century. And so there are good pains, there are growth pains. But scientists have to figure out what is science, where they want to go, because there's this question that is not asked. And so, because I'm not a scientist, I'm really comfortable talking about this, because I don't belong to a community. You know that to do something, we need to belong to a community, and because I don't, I'm a foreigner. I'm an outsider, so I have some more liberties, and that's cool. So I have a very cool problem that I discovered some years ago, that I decided that I wanted to work with, and I was fortunate to live in this era because I could study. Because open science, that we discuss so much now, has already 20 years in physics, and I study physics. And so I had everything for free. I could study everything, but I don't have a degree in physics, so I don't have any credibility inside the community. And I saw a really big problem, and I'm from marketing. So I think I can think about how to solve this problem with strategy. And that's what I did. So this is I'm telling you how I think I can change something in science from the outside of the science, because it's easy for me, because I'm outside. I don't have to follow the rules. And so I hope you like my 5-minute presentation. And thank you. I will be glad to answer some questions you have about it.
We'll have just very quickly, anybody who wants to comment? So we have the opportunity to have a short intervention. If not, we'll move on to you.
All right.
Yes, from the kit.
Hi, I'm Max from Karlsruhe Institute for Technology Assessment and Systems Analysis. So our institute deals with quite similar problems as we do. Technology assessment means for us mainly enhance options for action and enhance reflexivity and clarify values. And the new approach for this is called the hermeneutical technology assessment. And this is some social science work that I made in the project for bioeconomy. And in bioeconomy, there's a big research on microalgae nutrition. So I do the social science part, but there were engineers and economists and microbiologists and nutrition scientists who deal with the other stuff. And my big question was, what is the public perception of microalgae nutrition? So what are the visions of people? And this is for interest because, well, I think it's not about the rational arguments or the beliefs and wishes of scientists that have an influence on what technologies be developed, but it's a lot the future projections in the public that create new markets and that create and that sketch up networks and context for actions and so on. And so my question was, what are the key narratives? So key narratives is a form of externalizations of future projections that we can actually observe. and there's a lot of literature about it, so it can also be backed up in theory. And well, I did this with a public Delphi survey. What is the normal Delphi survey aims to get the expertise of a small group, and this was more to get the folk expertise about what are the public imaginations of microalgae nutrition. And what I found out, well, it was a 2-round online Delphi survey, and I got 220 participants. And I found out that on top what they want is that it has some that it does some contribution to climate change and feed the world, and opposing to the expectations to the expectations of the experts. The industrial production that was seen as the opponent of a naturalness is totally on the bottom of the hierarchy, and even the taste aspects are also quite on the bottom. But, well, this is something that is quite common. What I was interested in was, as it is a Delphi survey, is the correlations between the answers. So what I did was some cluster analysis and some correlation matrix. And the cluster analysis found out that it's actually 4 blocks of imaginations. And the next step for me was narrativizing those clusters in little stories that are comparable, and to make a better imagination on what these future imaginations are about. I will just read some of them. Like, there are currently over 7.5 billion people living on Earth. Either we are cutting our global resource consumption today, or tomorrow we will be forced to by the impact of the wasted environment. Microalgae could be the solution. They store carbon dioxide and can be produced without arable land and the use of pesticides. Microalgae will be an important pillar for sustainable nutrition in the future. To see the contrast of the narrative framing, I would just take, for example, this one, or not this one. In accelerated society, there is a growing need and desire for a balanced and healthy diet. Thus, microalgae are rediscovered as a part of Far Eastern teachings. The ingredients and variety of microalgae promise health and individual feeling of fitness and certification. Microalgae will contribute to a healthy and enjoyable future. And what I did in the second Delphi round was I gave them those narratives and I asked them, do you actually expect that this will be the future, and is this your desirable future? And the interesting result was that that the participants want that microalgae contribute to sustainability and to feed the world, but expect that it's more like a health product or something really inconspicuous and cheap. And this was actually meant to be compared with the model results. So we know from LCAs that it's not so easy to get a benefit in carbon dioxide, and they won't be so cheap as soy. So actually all these visions got a problem, and what we did was we took these narratives and made a workshop with scientists and stakeholders from industry to enhance the reflexivity so that now they can reflect on what narratives they belong, because all presentations in science and industry actually frame with one of those narratives. And, well, ideas to help them not to propose exaggerated expectations. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Max. Any quick question? I will remind you that all the authors will be present. You can, interview them further. So if there is no quick question, let's move to the next one. Who is that? Daniel?
Well, it was just delivered from Argentina, so they are not present.
They are not present? Okay, so you may read it. Then we have, that's Petra?
Our poster is about personalized social services of general interest, as they are called in the European Commission. That is all social services you use in your life from birth to graveyard. So everything helped, like education, like childcare, like healthcare, like pensioners and pension support and so on, usually organized by state funding or charity funding, and the European Commission is thinking about how to improve PSSGI delivery in the European Commission and elsewhere. And that is, this project, this iframe project, is about policies for improving PSSGI in the European Commission. There are many power asymmetries in PSSGI service delivery. Across all these services, you can think about it starts when you need social services for alone educating mothers with children and so on. There is a difference of giving voice to interest in service delivery between the young, the middle, and the elderly, and there is a different capacity to give voice. And the question is how to equalize this. There are huge differences in PSSGI delivery across the European member states, of course. Yeah, so old versus new member states, there's a huge difference. But even if you only look at the old member states, you can see that there are very family-oriented member states and non-family-oriented, and the way social service delivery is requested and required is completely different in these systems. So there are many dimensions where there are differences in requesting and in providing and in supplying these social services. And so there's a different representation as well at the European Commission of all of these groups and dimensions, and therefore their question is how to bridge these asymmetries to voice interest in PSSGI life cycles and in various dimensions across the member states. That's the first question of the project. And the second is that there are questions of quality criteria of the service delivery, because they are supplied by various groups on various levels of quality. So new actors come into the game of social service delivery. Privatization hooks in, so new actors move in, new technologies move in, so ICTs change a lot in social service delivery, and the question is, what does this do with the quality of the services, and how is quality negotiated between the groups and under the new conditions of new suppliers in the various member states, especially the latter, that new actors and new technologies arrive with ICT, raises questions of knowledge quality mechanisms in a cohesive manner in the European Commission. We use simulations, as you see by the title, to try to find PSSGI narratives across the various supply and delivery systems, and we gather experiences with PSSGI service delivery, and we look for the effects of different policies and social service delivery, and investigate the questions I've mentioned. Thank you very much.
Any quick reaction? What?
But how will then the Commission use this? They will click a button and have a scenario, or you need to do it myself?
So this is just a project sketch in the moment. The idea, of course, is very ambitious, as always with the Commission. I think they would love to have a button to press, and on the top you raise the question, and below you get a paper sheet with the answer, and a policy recommendation comes out of it, and everything works fine. I don't think that it will work this way. We plan the project as a stakeholder-driven experience, so we want to start with the questions of people receiving and demanding these services, and with new actors and new suppliers, and asking them for changes of PSGI service delivery. And we want to use this as an input for a so-called agent-based model, where you have agents in the simulation with properties and behaviors resembling actors in the real world, and we try to use hermeneutic and qualitative techniques to inform agent behaviors. So as good as our empirical research will be, the model, the quality of the model will look like. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Petra. I invite our next presenter. That's you? Okay.
Thank you. So yeah, my name's Max Leighton. I'm a social scientist from the University of Reading in the UK. And I'm going to talk about how we're using narratives for policy making. This is part of a big research program across the African continent, and our project focuses on cities in southern Africa. It's to do with climate change. My research is focused on Zambia in the capital, Lusaka, and a bit of background. Mean temperature has risen about 1.3 degrees since 1960, and the population is set to double by the mid-2030s. So we conduct transdisciplinary workshops with academics, local government, civil society, and then practitioners from the water and energy sectors. And we jointly identify and frame the most pressing issues, and then we build knowledge around that collectively. So we're left with it's a big body of knowledge that's rich and detailed from a plurality of perspectives, but the challenge is organizing that into something usable. So we're organizing it as a narrative to give it a clear temporal timeline, and to identify the actors, their perspectives to these issues. And so it started out as primarily a climate change project, but through our deliberation, it's kind of morphed into a water security project. So the main issues, we've got four, are kind of declining groundwater pollution, flooding, which then often leads to cholera outbreaks, and there's poor infrastructure to do with water supply and sanitation. And then, of course, climate change does further complicate these issues. So we've developed these climate risk narratives, where we've taken climate information from CMIP5 and distilled that down into 3 plausible narratives. And warming is pretty, across the models, warming is pretty clear, but precipitation, common story, is harder to work out. So some models say drier, some models say more erratic, some more extreme. So we've come up with these, the picture on the right. And they're developed through, with participants through the workshop and climate scientists from Cape Town and the Met Office in the UK. And then what we're doing, we're using these as the ending of this story of water in Lusaka. So they form the basis of 3 potential futures that are grounded in local knowledge, regional knowledge. And then we're also going through the conventional route of policy briefs, which are being presented today to national government, actually, in Lusaka. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Explain shortly, what is a fractal workshop? I can read the headline, fractal workshop.
Yeah, future resilience for... it's a big acronym that I can't actually remember right now. Okay. But most people can't.
With fractals. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What is the source of the water in that place? Is it come from a river, from a lake, or so? Is it groundwater pollution? Is exactly how? Is it from the rocks? Something is getting mixed. Something is being thrown in the water. Have you identified the source of pollution?
So yeah, it's mainly to do with solid waste management actually,
Ah.
and then also the problem is that the pit toilets are too close to the boreholes, and then in times of flooding, they're not lined well enough, and it contaminates, and cholera is regular. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Max. Now, do we have Sergio? Sergio present? Yes, here. Yeah. Okay, you have the last one.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I'm working about anticipation, about the framework of anticipatory governments in my PhD dissertation. And one of my the chapters of my dissertation is dedicated to understand what is the role of postnormal science in these new frameworks, maybe indirect role or direct role. So one of the questions that I try to address in this poster is how the postnormal science framework can help us to assess the epistemic quality of anticipations. And one of the conclusions that I can arrive is that integrating different point of views, making an extended peer community is essential in order to open up the futures. Because if you don't have different presents that are pointed in the same place and different feelings, values, knowledge, etc., you cannot differentiate between different paths in the future, technological futures. So that's the main result of this poster, and I will be pleased to answer all the questions you may have about it. Thank you.